Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome back to another week at DroneDJ. This week, the topic of the week is leaks on the Air 3, and then we'll also talk a little bit of potentially a drone highway in the sky. And at the end, we'll talk about firefighting with drones interfering. So let's turn to Kirk. Air 3, what are your thoughts?
I have so many thoughts and opinions on the Air 3 because it's such before the leaks, before this first leak, which is I think the most speculative leak we have to be on because we don't really know a whole lot about it just yet. I was imagining just an upgrade to the Air 2S. Like, how would you make an Air 2S as good? And you just can't do that with the Mavic 3 Classic being around. But now, so the latest leak, which again, we got to be a little bit speculative on this because it's the first leak, apparently shows a dual camera system similar to what the Mavic 3, the first version of the Mavic 3 had. But
Yeah,
not
I'm trying
as
to bring up details
yeah,
for.
not as
There
big
we go.
as not as impactful as the Mavic 3. So it's like it actually is starting to make sense in my head.
And very blurry pictures to try to make
Yeah,
up for
oh,
this.
the photos are so blurry. Like this is the classic first leaks from DJI, which someone mentioned that DJI seems to be trying to shut it down a little bit more on the leaks. Um I don't know. We'll see. I have zero faith that we won't get the entirety of the Mavic 3 leak because all of
Before
it,
product release?
yeah, because we have like we have like Deals Drones, I can't remember what the other one, what the guy is, and then we have this guy, which I can't, like
Quattro
Igor
New?
or whatever, can't remember what his name is, but like I know that we have the three major like leakers on Twitter, and they leak like the most of the photos, but the people who've leaked the stats or the specs are the retailers themselves. So if you can't get the retailers down, like you're not going to be able to get leaks done.
Well, there's
But
a difference between leaking and getting people's attention versus releasing all the product details. I mean, before Mini 3 Pro came out, and I guess before Mavic 3 Pro came out, we
uh-huh.
already knew, what the specs were
I'm trying
because
to
of
think.
the leaks.
The Mini 3, regular Mini 3 had the same thing. The Mavic 3 Classic had the same issue. Like I think every drone, like a retailer does it early. Like it's like a week early. It's like a couple days early. Yeah, every single time. However, this leak, you see the image. The image is anything to go by. It kind of looks like a go between the Air 2S and the Mavic 3. Like it kind of looks a little bit like they smashed the two together. Um, so I'm expecting it to be probably smaller than the Mavic 3.
Well, it's got to be smaller than Mavic 3 and bigger than Mini 3 Pro. We just
Obviously,
don't
it's gonna
know.
be somewhere. It's gonna
We
be
don't
like
know if it's
smack
gonna
dab in the
be
middle.
bigger than the original Air 2S.
Yeah. So and we were okay. So we were talking before. We were like, I shut it down our conversation beforehand because we were like getting way too into it. Like of like
We'll talk
what?
about it on the air.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you want to go like how do we see the Air 2S like line up in the space? Like I don't know what you
Well,
thought.
I think that's a given. It's got to
Yeah.
be between the Mini 3 Pro and the Mavic 3 Classic, right? It's
Yeah.
got to be below the lower, like the entry level for the Mavic 3 series.
Yeah.
And if that's
It's
the case, we took a look at pricing.
mhm.
So right now, and again, if you're in States, pricing is going to be slightly higher, but we're looking at
Yeah.
early $2,000 for Mavic 3. That's the Pro version.
Yeah, and
And we're looking
I
at,
think US is like 23-ish, I think,
right.
off the top of my head. Yeah, so I think
So
like add like a couple
So
$100 to
probably
Canadian
16
prices.
to 17 to 1800 for the classic, and we're
Mhm.
comparing apples with apples, right? So we're comparing the model with DJI RC controller.
Yeah,
So 16 to 1700 for the classic, and then Mini 3 Pro, so close to $1,000 with DJI RC. If
yeah.
the Air 3 were to fit in between, we're looking at essentially between 1,000 and 1,700. So if you ask me, around like between 12 to 1,300 would be my guess.
That's like the reasonable spot to put it at, and then like I think specs is gonna be the hardest to. I think it's easy. So we asked like what we were asking like what would make you
Yeah, what
want
would
to
make
upgrade
you
from the
like
Mini threes?
specific
Yeah.
Kurt, what would make you buy the, let's say if you didn't have any drones and
Hmm.
you were considering something to get started. So what would convince you to go with Air 3 instead of Mini 3 Pro?
So for me, it's the Mini 3 Pro has two things going for it. That's the size and it being sub 250. That's like other than that, like I mean, it has a great camera, but like if like it's not like the a big thing to get that for the camera. Other than if you really want vertical shooting, I guess the other, if you really need vertical shooting, that's like kind of the only
It's
option.
convenient.
Yeah, it's very convenient. For me, like if I have room, if I don't mind it being more than 250 grams, and I have like a couple more inches of room in my bag for it, like I don't at that point, like yeah, I guess if I can get the Air 3 for a couple more dollars, like, and it's a way better drone, like camera wise, then that is a win because it's going to be a much larger sensor. So the leak right now is 1 inch
1 inch
sensor,
sensor.
which is similar to what we see on the Air 2S. It's a 1 inch sensor. So I guess an upgrade to that. Like I think it does what it does. Does it do? I don't know. 4K 50 probably. Does it do 4K 60?
You're supposed to do 4K 60.
Okay, so
4K 60
maybe
is DJI standards now.
I don't see it going up to 5K because that would be getting too close to the Mavic 3.
Yeah, I don't think if you ask me, I don't think
I
it's
could
gonna do 5K.
I could see
But
doing 4K
having
120.
having said that, look at when DJI released the Air 2S. It was actually at that time it was Mavic 2 Pro, right, as
Yeah,
the upper level, and the Air 2S in certain areas was actually doing better than the Mavic 2 Pro. So I don't
yeah,
know,
but
DJI may
we
surprise us.
just had the Mavic 3 Pro, like just like last month. So like you can't, if this is coming out in July, I don't know. It'd be hard to like leapfrog your flagship product within like a few months. You can't like so I could see 4K 120, and then there's then of course there's rumors of it either being a 3x camera or a 7x camera on top of that.
I'm gonna
Probably
suspect 3x just because it's been working so well.
it has been. It's so the 3x camera is so nice. Um, the issue with that is like, how do you make the Mavic 3 still like if it's a 1 inch and then the 3x camera, like don't get the Mavic 3 Pro. Like just don't like just get
Okay,
that.
I'll share my 2 cents on why I would get the Air 3. Like what would be the considerations for
Mhm.
me? First comparing to Mini 3 Pro. I mean, I like Mini 3 Pro being under 250. I like
Mhm.
to be able to fly, inside of like I can sit inside of my car when it's really hot or really cold. I don't have to
Yep.
worry about visual line of sight. I can go a little further than what I typically would just because it's a smaller drone. I feel more comfortable with it, and also legally speaking. Now, the
Yep.
other perspective is I had Mini 3 and Mavic 3 um, last week out for a shoot, and it was by the lake, so it got pretty windy. I barely could move with Mini 3
Oh yeah.
just because when you actually have headwind, I could barely move with it. But Mavic 3 was cutting through the wind like butter. And the weight does come into play, right? Mini 3
Yep.
is light, so it will get tossed around more in windy conditions. So that's one decisive factor for me is size does matter and the ability not just to like stay stable in the wind, but able to actually move in higher wind. Now,
Mhm.
second one is sensor. So again, size does matter. If you try any of the active tracking, right? If you try the quick shots, like the automated drone shots where you select an object, you'll find that with Mini 3, it doesn't lock as well as Mavic 3 or
Mhm.
anything with a little bigger sensor. Because ultimately, it's all visual based, it's image based, it's trying to lock on the target. So I find with active tracking, the bigger drones do a lot better than Mini 3 Pro. So those would be my two reasons of getting it. One, it's better performance in the wind, so more reliable in weather. And two
Yep.
is for any of the smart features, automated flights, the sensor does work better.
Yeah, I think my reasons why I would go with the Mavic 3 over an Air 3 would be if I really need to do Apple ProRes, because there's no way Apple ProRes is coming to Air 3.
Well,
Um,
never say never.
Never say never, but I know that's a big like I don't know, being the flagship camera, like you need to have just as a businessman, you need to have a reason to like buy the more expensive
Well,
drone,
let me put it
like
this
because
way.
that's
DJI
a
is
couple thousand
also
more.
like just judging from experience, DJI's got to give Air 3 something that's better than Mavic 3 Pro. Like there's got to be one thing that's better on Air 3.
I
We
think
just don't
it's
know
got to be
what it's gonna be.
price and it's got to be like
Well, no,
size
I
is a
mean
little bit
feature
smaller.
wise, it's got to have one
Yeah.
thing that's better. Like when DJI first released the well, what did they call it? Like their pilot assistant system, right? The new
Hmm.
version was actually first on the Air 2S. before it was even introduced on any of their other drones.
Yeah.
So would they have a better, pilot assistant, like pilot flight or obstacle avoidance of some sort?
Maybe maybe it's the first one with like, the new APAS or a new like AccuSync or something like that. Like maybe it was 04. The first one was 04. Or Active Track 4 or something like that. Wait, what version of Active Track are we on right now? Is it 3 or 4? I don't remember. What are the next version of Active Track?
We're on APAS 3. So
Yeah,
APAS would include, it would support all the quick shots, active track, all the features.
So I guess like maybe it's the first one that gets APAS 4.
Yeah, who knows?
That would make sense. Like that one would make sense to me. Like it's just, but also that it's just like the lineup of releases is just so weird with Mavic 3 Classic coming out last year, which pretty much replaced the Air 2S as like the go-to, like kind of like mid-level drone. And then the Mavic 3 Pro just came out this year. So then now they're coming out with the new Air drone, which like the Air 2S needs an upgrade. But like, how do you upgrade the Air 2S without just completely making the Mavic 3 Pro useless? I think adding a 3X would probably do that, because a 3X is just, it changes the way you look at a drone. Like it just hands down changes the way you look at a drone. It is not like it just, that compression it adds without it being like too punched in like a 7X. It's just so good. It's so good.
And the quality is good on the 3X.
Yeah, it's very, very good. I mean, like you see even on the 7X, the quality is amazing. Like it's not either of the cameras are not like bad. Yeah, they're not Micro Four Thirds, but they're not bad. Because I think the 7X is like a similar size to the Mini 3 Pro. I think they're like 1/1.3 or something, or something along those lines. And or maybe that's the 7. Maybe that's the 7X or 3X. I mean, but I don't know, it's just the compression just adds so much to it. Just adds so much to the video, which is something you don't get with a wide angle lens. So I don't know, like it's the Air 3. I'm super excited to see like what they come out with, because it's just I'm a little bit baffled of what they could come out with. I know what I want, but we're gonna leave that for another video. I think I'm gonna do that next week about what I want on the Air 3. But like I know like
we'll have a video just on Kirk's drone enterprise.
Yes, it's all gonna be Air 3s.
I'm looking forward to the Air 3. Just interested in seeing what they would put on there, right? Like I said, I think there's got to be one feature that's better than the Mavic 3 Pro. And other than that, to me, the weight, and plus, the ability with a bigger sensor that does it better than the Mini 3 Pro would be great.
Yep. Yeah. And of course, this is the first leak. So I'm expecting to see more. I think
if it's really scheduled for June or July, I'd say the first leak is already late.
Yeah, I mean they're getting. I guess that's right. They're getting later. The leaks are getting later and later into the release cycle. So maybe
but also the release is getting earlier. Okay, it used to be DJI releases it and you can order right away and it's shipped out, like you have it in the next couple of days. But now is they release it and you have to pre-order and wait a while before the drone is even available.
Yeah, now it's like a month after. So I don't know. I guess some people are getting Mini 3 Pros now. I think it's I've been seeing some
Mavic
more
3
people.
Pro?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing more and more people.
Supposed to be next week.
Yeah, so I think I've seen some people say they're getting one. So hopefully we're gonna review out like soon. Like it's a lot. We've been doing a lot. We're doing a lot of filming. So. Yep.
Moving on, we'll touch on a couple of smaller stories. One is, one sec, let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Ding, ding, and go back to share. There we go.
Yeah.
Why is it still staying on the Air 3?
Yeah, you have another tab though on the top?
But I'm selecting like in the preview, it's telling me I have the right one, which is really weird. Let me try a different. Okay, I tried a different mode. There we go.
There we go.
Bugs with live stream. What can you do?
I love StreamYard.
Drone links about 400 feet. We talked about this in some of the previous videos too, where we're talking about, okay, logically speaking, before the car industry really boomed, we had infrastructure built, right? We had roads, we had civil development. So if we really want to see drone delivery, if we want to see beyond visual line of sight or drone taxi, all of those, cool things, we need to have highways in the sky. And this story pops out about building, well, first of all, mapping cellular signal data up to 1,000 feet. I don't know about the cell phone signal in States, but I can tell you in Canada, the moment you leave, the five major cities, pretty much cell phone signal is very unpredictable. And again, the moment you leave any even township boundary, to get cell phone signal, essentially the coverage of cell phone signal in Canada is terrible the moment you leave civilization. So I don't know what the situation is in States.
It's yeah, you don't know. You just never know. Like even inside a major city, like you still could have terrible service. So it just depends on your carrier. So
I
remember
haven't
in
taken
Orlando, I had terrible service where I lived in Orlando, and that's Orlando. It's like a huge city.
So I haven't taken subway in years, and 2 weeks ago, I had to take subway just because I had to leave downtown Toronto during like the worst traffic time.
Mhm.
And I realized because I heard this long time ago, like in the subway you actually have Wi-Fi now. I don't know if in
Mm.
States you have Wi-Fi throughout the subway system.
I'm trying to think. I think DC subway had Wi-Fi when I was there. I think they
So
do.
long story short, I was in the subway and I had cell phone signal when the train was in the subway station. But the moment it went into the tunnel, there was no more Wi-Fi signal.
Oh, it was only in the stations.
Yeah, so it's only the stations.
It's weird. Some interstates here have Wi-Fi, like legit. Like some of the major interstates will have like
I
free
mean, I guess
Wi-Fi.
the question is how hard can it be to actually make Wi-Fi or cell phone signal available when there's civilization? Um, Again, before we see like actual mass or reliable drone deliveries, it can't be relying on the GPS signal.
Yeah,
It's got to rely on some kind of local network it can tap into.
yeah.
Because at that point you're not flying using your controller. Like we're not talking about using your controller and say, okay, my controller can support up to 15 kilometers
Hmm.
with non-obstructed ideal conditions. At most, you get a couple of kilometers in civilization, right? In like
Yeah, like
urban
I remember
environment.
aviation has. I mean, nowadays aviation has a lot, but like you go back maybe like
Navets.
I don't know
Yeah,
when
back old
VRRs
times it
came
was
out.
Navets.
Oh yeah, I was like, I mean, I don't know like when VRRs came out because they have VRRs, which are like can help you navigate, like something
Yeah.
like that, where you just have just the FAA has to come in or the state has to come in and be like, okay, we're going to build infrastructure to support drones being able to fly. So one, it's improved safety and builds the economy and brings in stuff like that. So I that's kind of like I think we're waiting
I
on
think it's a
something like that.
given. You need
Yeah,
infrastructure in the air. It's the question comes down to
who pays
who
for it?
is yeah, who is and who is in charge of it, who's managing it,
Hmm.
how do you manage it, right? And if that infrastructure is not about putting down concrete, like doing
Hmm.
asphalt, or doing gravel, then if it's really related to network, like your 4G or 5G towers, then who's building them and who's opening up that network to make sure drones can tap into it?
Yeah, and here in the States, and everything's done through contracts with private companies, but it's it might be owned by the federal government, but like it's operated by a private company, built by a private company, and all that other stuff. Um, there's a bigger push for everything to just be commercial, like everything just be like, instead of the government, paying all of it, it's like a split between the government and a private company to pay for it, and then the private company gets to own it, or at least private company gets to own it, but like everyone has to use it. um I feel like that's probably, if I would bet, like that's probably how we'll probably see it, where like a company like Google comes in and be like, hey, well, we want we want wing deliveries to be like better way of doing wing deliveries. So like, why don't we just pay, why don't we just work out a deal with like the state, with the city of San Francisco, or Palo Alto, wherever the hell, or wherever I don't know where Google is, somewhere in California, and we just do the entire city with our Google 5G towers or whatever, um, and then that's how it probably works. That's my guess on
I
how
guess we'll
something like
see.
that. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but like having lanes above 400 feet would be great. Like that would just be like great for the
Well,
industry
these
as a
guys
whole.
are talking about between 400 and 1,000 would be, which
Yeah.
would be ideal. And I talked about this before as well. I wouldn't want drones just to cut straight line, let's say from point
Mhm.
A to point B, because the straight line is the shortest. I wouldn't want it to cut through, let's say, residential neighborhoods. They've got to map the ground to say, let's say, where kids' play areas are, where schools
Or
are. Like those areas, I wouldn't want to see drones flying over them.
it could be stepped. Like it could be like, I mean, are you talking about like for like in case like, it falls or for noise?
I guess for both.
Okay, because they're like, yeah, because for safety, I can see that. Like, you don't want to go over like schools, you don't want to go over like parks or something like that, just in case it does fall out of the sky. I feel like for noise wise, you can always. I mean, even the Mavic 3 at 400 feet is like pretty
You can
quiet. It's not
you
like
can
terrible.
hear it, but depends.
So
Like, depends on the timing too.
it depends on the wind, depends on like whatever. But like,
Yeah, depends on
you can
ambient
step it
noise.
to where like you can go 400 feet here, but like once you get over to like these parts of it, like if you're over residential, you have to be at 1,000 feet. That way, like it just cuts the noise out. And then it's like, I mean, as for noise for me, I'm so used to it. I live at an airport. Like I live planes take off over my head like every
No,
day. So like
some
we don't.
people I know some people who can't sleep without straight noise.
Yeah, like it's like some people come to our house and they're just like, man, like it's so loud. How do you get anything done? And I'm like, they don't take off at night, so I guess it's like whatever. Night operations will probably have to be limited. Like, yeah, you can't operate at night
But
over
even
residential.
I mean, even the planes you're talking about taking off and landing, once they've ascended into their cruising altitude, they
You
have
don't hear them.
defined flight path. It's
Yeah.
not like they just fly wherever they want. So
Well,
to me,
well,
there's got
well.
to be, I mean, to a degree, we're talking about
Yeah.
commercial passenger planes. We're not talking
We
about your little single engine buzzing around,
Yeah.
right?
Of course, like this would be over cities, which most cities have an airport, which then has uncontrolled airspace around the city. So like Milwaukee would be one of them, where it's like you're not concerned about it. Wouldn't be, there would be no concern from general aviation messing with these lanes because like it's all under General Mitchell's Class B, I think, airspace or Class C airspace. The only issue would be North Milwaukee doesn't have any is outside of the airspace. So would you have a lane? Would you have to add in airspace? Like, would you have to extend the controlled airspace just around a city? So usually it's
Well, they've got to build lower layers.
yeah, like
The
this would
airspace that general planes actually aren't using, like even when it's class B around the airport, once you step, let's say, a mile away from the center of the airport,
mhm,
you look at the actual airspace, it's still going from
it's
surface up to 2,000 feet. Are
yeah,
planes actually going to go between the surface and 400 feet at that point?
yeah. The concern for me, the concern would be for my specific use case would be Milwaukee to Racine, which Racine doesn't have a major airport. So Racine is a city just south of Milwaukee. If you want to know geographic, it's like maybe like a couple miles south, and at least from the southernmost point of the airspace, there's a lot of farmland. So you're dealing with crop dusters
Hmm.
in that area, and so flying a drone at 400 to 1,000 feet, you're gonna run into crop dusters, or just general aviation because there is a like an airport in Racine that doesn't have an air. It's like has a I think maybe
Uncontrolled airport.
yeah I think it's uncontrolled. It has a tower, but I don't think there's any airspace around it. Um, so like you're gonna deal with general aviation as well at that point. So
Yeah.
if like something like Wing or Zipline or whatever or whatever company is gonna be operating in the United States here has a route between Milwaukee and Racine to fly the transfer what they're doing, you're gonna run into general aviation, which as all things we talk about with it doesn't matter what topic we bring up, general aviation usually tends to ruin everything because they don't like their ADSBs and they don't like following some of the rules because they're too
The
big to really
smaller
be
ones,
controlled.
yeah.
So I think they're gonna have to add in like a new type of airspace where it's pretty much controlled airspace, but instead of it being just a circle around an airport, because I'm trying to think of like the map. I don't off the
Well,
top of my head, I don't know
okay,
any.
I
I don't.
have seen proposals. As
Yeah,
as we know, the drone industry, manufacturers or tech companies, startups, whichever case may be, um, I think the principle is tech companies don't rely on traditional industries to make the change
they.
before a
Yeah,
technology can really take off. So what I have seen is certain tech companies providing proposals to say, okay, you know what? If general aviation aren't going to make sure that they all have ADSB and they follow through, let's say remote ID and all of that, how about we figure out? So I've seen one company, let's say they came up with a device. Essentially, it's a LiDAR scanner with a processor unit in there, and it would actually scan basically around the drone.
Hmm.
to detect other airplanes, birds, and then the processing unit would, assess based on the speed, direction, and then send the commands to the drone to essentially have evasive maneuvers around that object. So again, the what it comes back to is if they don't want to do it, then we'll figure out a way of making
We'll
us
figure
go
out a way
around
around
it.
it.
Yeah.
That's like the most like Silicon Valley way of doing of like thinking of things, which is very true. Like usually like tech companies just find a way to do it and
Yeah.
then the
And
regulations
there's
come
nothing
later.
wrong with it.
And well, in some areas they don't get regulation at all, but aviation is going to be regulation. It's already a regulated area. I can't think off the top of my head
Being
like
regulated and
yeah,
being enforced are not
other
always
other
the
than
same.
like yeah, other than TFRs and like special use airspaces and stuff like that. Like I don't know of any other like type of like just airspace that's just not around an airport, like a controlled airspace that's not around an airport. Other than of
Drones
course like
drones
other
won't
than
be
like restricted stuff.
right.
But like where you just say like this corridor, like this just this area is you need permission to fly in this corridor. Um, other than maybe like I guess IFR stuff, um, but at that point you're getting like airlines and that's a whole nother world. But just like
Well,
low
I think
altitude, it'd
it's
be interesting to see.
I mean, overall, it's a good thing to see companies starting to realize, right? Mapping is the first step. It's like
Hmm.
before sailing around the world really became, feasible. Someone's got to take that first step to go map and
Hmm.
try to map the navigation map around the world. So I guess let's see what happens as the result. Again, we'll keep an eye on it and see if they end up mapping. And maybe the mapping comes back as it's not feasible because we have terrible cell phone or Wi-Fi coverage.
Or it comes back and I was like, well, here's the first step. We need to fix the Wi-Fi cell phone coverage, and then we can start looking at how are we
Or who
flying
knows?
safely.
Maybe another tech company will come out and have some kind of remote, maybe put an actual mobile station on the drone of some sort and create its own network. Who knows?
Oh my gosh, yeah. You just have tethered drones. Just tethered drones everywhere.
Last one for this week is if oh, why does it still do that to me? I stopped changing the tabs when I'm changing the tabs. All right, there we go. Let's try this. Okay, so if you are living in forest fire regions, we are in the high season essentially for
Hmm.
forest fires. So in Canada, here is out west in Alberta, and in states is Montana's. So make sure if you fly your drones, don't get interfered with any firefighting activities, especially the planes, the helicopters that are actually carrying water doing firefighting. They tend to get grounded if they see actually smaller drones buzzing around. So that's the one note. We are seeing more drone reports in the I guess local firefighting efforts.
Hmm.
In Canada, the rules are 5 nautical miles around a forest fire area. You're not supposed to fly drones in there unless you coordinate it with your
Yeah,
local fire, like a fire station, or your local Transport Canada office even.
I wonder if there's again like a system that could be added for like ad hoc like TFRs around um
So in Canada,
around
it's
fire
managed through
because you can
NOTAM. It's
yeah
managed through NOTAM, so you can
okay
find it through NOTAM.
yeah because they exist but like if you ever because when you fly at least a
Maybe
DJI drone
DJI should
like
actually update this under no-fly
they'll
zone map.
yeah like they'll be able to tell like if you're near a TFR or if you're near
Yeah,
like controlled airspace and it'll tell you whether or not you can or can't take off
yeah, because
but
it's
like there's
already
a while.
telling you, like, at least on your DJI no-fly zone, it's already
Mhm.
telling you if you're
Because
in their no-fly zone, right, close to the airport.
for TFRs in the states, I only know a little bit of this through covering space flight. Is that it's not it's pretty easy to disband a TFR, but to file for a TFR, you kind of have to do it like a
It's
little bit
pretty
in advance.
challenging.
It's not
Yeah.
like a trivial thing. So I don't know if there's a way like there could be a way that from the
That's why it's usually done through NOTAM. Like if it's
yeah.
temporary, NOTAM is usually within 48 hours
Yeah.
of it being active. You
The
can
issue is
file
that I
it.
don't think NOTAMs like pick up through DJI's
That's what I'm saying.
stuff.
DJI
Yeah,
should pick it up. They
There's
should
a
pick it
maybe
up.
it's a this is all on like the private industry to try to pick up NOTAMs, but also I think
It's
I don't
more on the pilot. Like I would check certain NOTAMs. If you're experienced, you would know what to check. For
yeah
example,
here
if
in
there's even
yeah
fireworks issue NOTAMs, And let's say every year when we have air show down at downtown Toronto during the Labor Day long weekend, they
Yeah.
would issue NOTAM. So because you don't want to get into the airspace when F-18s are buzzing around.
Yeah.
Hot air balloons. So any air shows, they're all through NOTAM. It would be nice if DJI filters through the NOTAM system and picks up the ones that's important.
I think for air shows, especially for for planned events, I think they pick those up because those are like done like weeks in advance. So that has an actual formal TFR that shows up on FAA's database. So that might get picked up in their system. But it's stuff like where it's also like a last minute, like, hey, there's a wildfire, new NOTAM. Like I don't think DJI ever picks that stuff up. Which would be nice if there's a
I mean, they could. It's all automated through the system.
Yeah.
So if they want to set it up, they could.
Yeah, who's at fault now? It's all the pilot, of course. It's all the pilot, of course. It's always us.
A little sideways. I'll tell you what are the common things I look for through NOTAM. So first of all, NOTAM. We'll talk about this as a separate subject. NOTAM system has been substantially updated. 3 years ago, it was a terrible NOTAM system. If I have to fly anywhere close to Toronto, I'd be slapped with like 30, 40 pages of different NOTAMs, not sorted. Not cataloged in any way, and there's no way online that you could either sort, filter, or do anything through the NOTAM. So at least right now, it's much, much better. At least there's a bit of the system. You can sort them. You can look for specific range areas rather than just having a one big blanket area.
Yeah.
But
I remember
common things I look for. I look for blasting. If I'm actually flying outside of urban environment, I actually look for blasting. Blasting, especially if you know you have quarries and mining operations, forest operations, that's actually very common. And I look for like crane or active construction. If anyone is temporarily putting up an object right in the air, they actually have to issue NOTAM too.
I remember when the FAA came out with regulations for like sports stadiums, like they pretty much put in like any sports stadium on sports days has a TFR.
Yep.
But they put that out, but the TFRs weren't in the TFR system. So the product when I worked as a software engineer, the way we just every week we would just find what the games were and just manually put in TFRs around the stadium for those times because they
I wish Canada would do that. I wish major like a critical infrastructures, right? Stadiums, let's say major landmarks, nuclear power plant would be nice. Prisons, because right now a lot of prisons also are not on the map. So I wish they would actually put those as restricted areas.
Interesting. The FAA is really good at adding spaceports, new spaceports being created on their maps, but like everything else, not so much. Like, like they're real good. Like they already have like stuff that's been created.
Maybe they just have a really good. Maybe they just have a really good team in that department.
Yeah, the commercial space transportation department of FAA is real good. It's real good. I mean, underfunded, but real good.
Well, okay, so that's everything we've got for you this week, and we'll circle back next week to see what else is new in the drone world. Thanks for joining us.